name is Zina Kumok, and this is How to Be a Freelance Writer in 1 Year or Less. If you thought I was Steve Chu, you still have plenty of time to go see his talk. I'm a trained journalist. I'm a former newspaper reporter and currently celebrating 1 year of freelancing full-time. And these are kind of a sample of my clients, mostly in the personal finance space: Mint, Quicken Loans, Discover, Investopedia. I interned at the Associated Press for 1 summer, and I still keep that in my back pocket. And I first started freelancing, I guess about 10 years ago after my first college internship. So just a show of hands, who here is already freelancing? Okay, so about most of you. Who here is freelancing full time, if anyone? Okay, perfect. So how to get started? First off, I think when you are freelancing, if you don't necessarily come from a journalist background, you might be hesitant to tell people what you're doing. It doesn't sound like a real job. A lot of people think you're just fooling around on the computer. I think you really have to tell people what you're doing, because you never know. They might refer you to someone, they might mention something, and it gives you the confidence to say, yes, I'm doing this. This is a full-time thing. This is going to be what I'm going to pursue. Secondly, you need to start a website to show your portfolio, to show what experience you have, some samples, testimonials. I've used Squarespace for mine, zinakumok.com. WordPress is also great. Wix. You don't need a lot. You just need resume, some of your biggest clients, some clips, really showcase the work that you do. There's tons of great articles out there about how to create a writer's website, but you really need to show something that when you're emailing a potential client, you have something. And testimonials are really great. Once you get those, pop them on there. They just make you look more polished, professional, and reliable. I really like having a portfolio through Contently. They're one of the biggest content marketing agencies right now. And you can create a portfolio through Contently. It's super easy and intuitive. And my favorite part about that is that Contently then scours your portfolio for work. And they pay really well. They actually pay instantly upon submission to your PayPal, which if you've done any freelancing and had been waiting for a check for 60 days, you know how rare that is. Plus, again, you can say, here's my full portfolio. It can look really impressive to clients. Follow people that are in your same space on social media. You never know when they'll post about job openings, or it's always good to interact with them. I get a lot of work through referrals through other writers, which is really big. You might not think about that, but it's really important just to know people in that same space. Writers groups are also really great. When you're doing something like this, you're working at home, it can be really isolating, and you're never sure if you're doing the right thing. So I really like going to writers groups and forums online and in person, just to see what other people are doing and just to share ideas and vent and talk about good clients and bad clients and what to do in certain situations. So raise your hands if you have any journalism, English majors, any experience learning about the craft of writing. Okay, so there's a few of you. So again, writing, there's tons of free resources. And also at the end, I'll have a link to a page I've created with some of my favorite writing books and classes that you can take. I think starting a blog is really great, because if you don't have any samples of your writing, you can blog to create that, to practice writing. No one can tell you what to write about, so you can just kind of get a feel for it. And some writers groups also critique your work. You might have to pay to join some of them, but again, they can be really great just to get some feedback, because people always point out things that you didn't consider. First-person sources are really great. Again, this might seem obvious to some of you, but I think that's what really stands out from a blogger and a writer. If you get interviews, studies, data, reports, talking to people firsthand, finding experts, that's always really important, and that can distinguish someone who is quoting a Wikipedia page to someone who actually, found the study that has the data and the facts for you. When in doubt, be precise, efficient, simple. I think as writers, it's really tempting sometimes to use a big fancy word, but journalism should be easy. I think 8th grade reading level is what you're aiming for. And there are some websites that can analyze your writing and tell you what reading level you're writing for, because a lot of people in this country have not graduated from college or even high school, so you want to aim for them. I subscribe, as my husband knows, to a ton of magazines, and I think it's really helpful to read a variety of work and to see how people put stories together. So if you don't have a lot of writing experience, it's really good to read an article and say, okay, how did they structure this? What did they do? What kind of facts did they use? What kind of information? What do their quotes look like? How often are they quoting someone? How many sources do they have? Just to get you a feel of how other people do things and how you want to create your own voice. I think asking for feedback is always great because, I mean, I know some of you, it might be hard to hear something negative, but again, you can only improve if you're getting feedback and constructive criticism. So if your editor's made some changes, look at them, see, ask why. I think most people, they appreciate that you want to get better, and it'll make you look like a better writer in their eyes. How to find clients. I think this is the million-dollar question. Again, FinCon is great. I don't know if anyone went to the Freelancer Marketplace yesterday or the Expo Hall and got people's business cards, but networking is so important, and it can be really scary and frightening to go up to someone and ask them if they're interested, but this is a business where if you do want to be a full-time freelance writer, you have to be willing to get outside your comfort zone, talk to people, say what you do, say it confidently, and just present yourself really well. So there's tons of different places, depending on what kind of niche you're targeting. If you're not targeting personal finance, there might be another conference you can go to. So that's what I would recommend. LinkedIn is great. I actually, just the other day after I made this, I found this app called Email Hunter, and it can look at someone's LinkedIn profile and kind of determine what their email address is. I'm not sure how it works, but it's awesome, and it can, again, help you find email addresses of potential clients, people you want to contact. Again, this is a collaborative environment. Someone asked me the other day, why are you friends with other writers? Like, aren't you all competing? And again, FinCon is full of the nicest people on earth, and I've had other writers refer me work. I've referred work to other writers, and people are just so nice and welcoming, especially in this community. So don't be afraid to ask. There are some good job boards out there. Again, I'm going to have a list in the resources section. Some, they just kind of scour from Craigslist. They don't really, vet what they're putting out there. I don't think job boards are that great because so many people are applying for them that it's really hard to get in. I've had maybe one job that I found from a public free job board in the 24 clients that I've had over the last year. So I think they're really hard. They're really popular with a lot of people, but I think it's better to contact clients personally. And again, just having portfolio, website, social media that you can send potential clients to prove that you're serious is really helpful, and updating your LinkedIn to reflect that as well. How to find the ideal client. I've been writing for a while now, and not every client is created equally. Some, they will do a ton of edits. They will require 3 rounds of revisions, and even if they paid you well, the amount of time that you spent and the headache just isn't worth it. So part of it is determining how much you need to make and how many clients you need to take on, and determining, okay, I'm going to take on a bunch of clients that are paying low because I'm trying to pay my rent and bills this month. How much are you comfortable writing? Again, some people are doing this on the side. They just want to make some side income. You're going to have to write more if you want to make it a full-time income. I did read someone suggested figuring out what your monthly goal is of what you want to make, and accounting for taxes and expenses, and then dividing that by the amount of days you're going to work in a month. So it's about 20 if you count in weekends, vacation days, and then figuring out that day rate, and every day aiming to hit that number, which has been really helpful for me because it's easier to calculate and see how much progress I'm making. And there's so much different kinds of content that people need. I primarily do blog posts and articles, but again, there's white papers, speeches, copywriting, editing, video scripts. There's a lot of different content out there. So if you have experience creating videos, that's a huge market out there. Maybe you don't need to focus on finding blog clients. And it's always okay to say no to a client if you don't fit their needs. I've had a couple who have asked me to write about things that I had no idea about. And maybe I could have figured it out, but maybe it would have taken a lot longer, and then I wouldn't be able to focus on my other clients who are easier to work with, who are within my niche. Maybe I couldn't take that time and market myself to other clients who are better fit. So I think the more narrow you go, don't get too narrow, but having a niche is really good, because once people know you in that space, then you become more popular and more reputable, and people know you. I think it's easy to assume you should be a generalist, but I think that kind of way of thinking is dying down. How to negotiate, maybe my favorite. I think you should always ask for more than what you're comfortable with. When you're kind of getting a weird feeling in your stomach and you're scared of saying the number, add a little bit more, because people will usually come back with a different number. You should always ask for their budget before you tell them your rate, because I know my friends, my writing friends and I, we've had a few instances where someone is willing to pay way more than we thought. And if we had said our rate, we would have gotten a lot less money. And again, there's tons of books out there about negotiating and getting more comfortable with it. I've been doing it for a while. I don't know if I love the process, but I've been getting better at just asking for money and negotiating. And sometimes you can offer fewer words if they can't meet your rate, or maybe fewer interviews or sources, just to kind of get it down to what you're comfortable with. One thing I have learned, it's easier to set an initial rate for your work with a specific client than to go back and ask for a raise later. It's a lot harder to get that money. They're used to paying it. Maybe they've already made their budget for the year and they physically can't do that. And then you have to justify why you're worth the raise, which can be great if you've driven traffic to their site, if you've created great content for them. But I think that's why you should always charge more than you're necessarily comfortable with at first, because you don't want to get stuck at a low rate that will become worse over time as you get higher paying clients. Sometimes I have offered a discount for multiple guaranteed articles a month, because this business, it's not stable, and if someone is guaranteeing me 3 articles a month, I might give them a 10%, 20% discount, because I'm going to have that coming in, and that saves me time trying to go out and scour for marketing to new clients, emailing old ones, seeing if they have projects available. So again, it's a trade-off of time and money. I prefer using a project rate instead of per hour or per word. Per word is pretty popular still with magazines, with print publications, and some people do per hour, but for me, it's better to get a project rate. And sometimes I've gotten good at estimating how long something will take. Most of my articles probably take, between 2 or 3 hours. So, yeah. And for me, I know, okay, I can do this for that amount of time. Again, that's just my preference. A lot of companies won't do per word, and I think per hour is weird because you won't know until the end, and so I think it's harder for them to budget. And I just feel like that's what most people are using nowadays. How to keep clients happy. First, turn in work on time. The word deadline, the word dead is in it, so just take it seriously. Follow their prompts and pitches. So if they are sending you an article idea or a style guide and you're not sure what something means, ask. It's always better to ask ahead of time rather than the day before you're about to turn in the article. It always helps to read through their website, their blog, just to see what their style is. Some of them will provide a style guide, especially if you go through an agency like Contently or Skyward. They'll provide it for you, and they'll tell you what their tone is, who their demographics are, similar publications that they're aiming for. It's always familiarize yourself with it. And if you do have problems, go to them first. If you know you're not going to make your deadline because you're going to a conference, if your kid got sick and you couldn't make your deadline, let them know, ask them for extension beforehand, before you've missed the deadline. More often than not, they'll give it to you, they'll understand, and yeah, it just always helps to be proactive about that. This is probably going to sound redundant. Do not plagiarize. I've had a few clients who have asked, will this be original content? And I say, of course it is. But they've had writers who have submitted things that they've written somewhere else. Don't do that. One thing I struggle with is I write a lot about the same topic, same article ideas come up, and I have to make sure I'm not repeating myself. I'm not self-plagiarizing, which is a thing. It's still plagiarism. It's still bad. You'll still probably get caught because they'll go through a filter and check for it. And if you do make a mistake, which is okay, we've all done it, apologize, do better next time, and always be the first one to bring it up because, again, that makes it look like you're being proactive and you're not hiding from it. So how to start a writer's website, which you can, again, send in the email when you're pitching prospective clients. Include testimonials. These are really valuable. I always ask people to say what it was like working with me, how easy it was, because there's a lot of freelancers out there, and if you can be someone that is easy to work with, you'll stand out from the pack. Previous work, I always like to show, the different niches that I write about, just to show the kind of reach I have. Contact information, always include email and phone number, not just a contact form, because don't make people work to find you. And studies show that people don't always like filling out contact forms. They're not sure where it goes. They think it's just going to go to spam or junk mail, and they'll never hear from you. I have both on my site, just in case. Yeah, talk about your writing, how you got into a chosen field. So if you don't have a journalism background, you want to write about parenting, talk about what it was like raising your toddler and what you learned and why you want to write about that. So, always just inject some personality into it. How to pitch your ideas. Again, when you're looking for clients, if you find a company you think that would be good to write for, like maybe you saw them here at FinCon, find the right person to contact. Don't just email the general email list. Those will often get lost, and sometimes they get redirected. But again, it's always better to find the first email. And maybe it's not the right person, maybe they'll direct you to it, but emailing a specific person, or sometimes even calling the company to say, hey, I'm a freelancer, who do I email to ask about work? Give a brief outline of the idea, because a lot of times people want to know what specific pitches you have. Most of my clients, they ask me for pitches. They don't assign me things. So creating original ideas is a huge, huge part of this job. Again, in your initial email with someone, mentioning where you've written, that can give you a lot of credibility and show that you've been doing this already. And again, just remember to include links. And I'm not afraid to follow up. I'm really annoying. I'm like that little sister that everyone hated. I have clients that I reached out to last year that are now assigning work. And the reason that I'm now getting work from them is that a year ago, they didn't have anything. But now I'm able to reach out to them again, and that when their content strategy maybe was overhauled, maybe their budget was cut, and now they have work. And I'm not afraid to reach out every few weeks for some people, depending on when they said to get back to them, or every few months. It's happened multiple times that I've gotten a client because I was just persistent. So I think that's really, really key. There's so many clients I wouldn't have if I wasn't afraid to reach back out to them. And I mean, it only takes 5 minutes to send an email saying, hey, here's something I've written lately, just wanted to see how you were doing, or mentioning something that you thought they would find interesting. One thing that's really important is crafting LOIs, which are letter of introductions. Those are, it's kind of what I've written here, but again, you can go online and find lots of specific information, how much to include, how long it should be. You can see examples from other writers. How to find ideas. Nora Ephron, one of my favorite writers, she said everything is copy. Everything you see around you is a story idea. I carry a notebook with me everywhere I go, like a small reporter's notebook, because in conversations with friends, I've come up with story ideas. You really have to be willing to just find inspiration everywhere. So that's why also I subscribe to a lot of magazines. Yeah, you have a question? Yes. I think maybe 10 years ago it would have been 50-50, but yeah, always by email. So part of being a writer is being curious about the world and asking why and how does that work, and just not being afraid to ask questions. So again, just whatever your niche is, just go deep into it. Read forums about it. Find specific niche websites and trade journals. Just everything you can, because that will give you a lot of inspiration. It'll help you see what other content is already available. It'll just help you, again, specialize and just become a real authority in that space. And I mean, even listening to podcasts, the radio, TV, news. I like to go to Reddit a lot to get article ideas because I can see what real people are thinking instead of just what my personal finance friends are thinking. So again, just ideas are everywhere, and if clients want you to pitch and come up with ideas, that's just going to be part of your job. And I think a lot of time that's how they determine who the freelancers are and who they give work to when they do have specific assignments, because they already know that you have pitches and ideas that if they give you an assignment, you're going to be able to come up with the story and with the interview and the sources and the data. Oh, a little hack that I do, I keep all my ideas separated by category. So I have budgeting, investing, family. I keep all my ideas separated. I have a Trello document, I think with about 100 ideas so far. And every time I have a new one, I just add it in. And when it's time to pitch ideas, I just go there and find ones that fit the publication I'm writing for. You don't have to use Trello. You can use Excel, Word, just anything that will keep them organized, because I find I have a bad memory. I don't always remember my article ideas, and it helps to have them written down somewhere. So when an editor is asking you for them, you already have a list handy. How to track your income and expenses. Again, this is not the fun, glamorous part of it. I use FreshBooks. It's my favorite. It lets me invoice quickly. It sends out automatic late fees to my clients, which is great. It also reminds them when to pay me. It also has a 50-cent PayPal fee, which is much lower. I think it's the lowest you can find anywhere. They can also pay through check, but FreshBooks is great. I track invoices and expenses through that. And I was using a spreadsheet before. You do have to pay for FreshBooks. But again, when you have multiple clients, remembering if someone already sent you an invoice, someone already paid you, it's pretty hard. You have to pay quarterly taxes when you're freelancing, especially when you are freelancing full-time. Usually set aside between 20 to 30%, depending on your tax bracket, if you're married, if you're in a higher tax bracket or lower one, just depending on your deductions. I'm not an accountant, obviously, so take that with a grain of salt. I use a spreadsheet to track my income. I put every article I write, I put the name of it, who I'm writing for, how much, when it's due, and then a check mark if I've invoiced for it. And that, again, that just helps me keep track because there's so many articles. You really have to stay organized, especially once you start freelance writing more and more. Don't be afraid to add late fees or rush fees. I think, again, asking for money can be really uncomfortable. But late fees, I do, I think, a 10% late fee because, I'm relying on that cash flow to get me through it, especially since I invoice after I've already done the work. And I do that after 30 days. I'm net 30. Rush fees are also allowed. Rush is, depending on what you decide, if it's within a week or 48 hours, just depending what you do. I think I've also done 10 to 20% rush fee. You can also say no if you don't want to write something quickly and work late to finish something. So keep receipts for expenses. I generally in Gmail I'll have a label for taxes for expenses, and at the end of the month I'll go through my bank statement and see what was a freelance-related expense or blog-related expense. I'll add that to my FreshBooks account. And then if there are any big receipts or emails that have receipts, I'll add that in as well. Eric Nassau, who you might have met here, he is at AccountLancer, and he's an accountant specializing with freelancers. Really helpful. He knows everything about freelancing and taxes. He's who I use for my taxes. So, because my mother's a CPA, and when I asked her to do my tax list, she had no idea about some of the deductions I could take. So it's really important to have an accountant who's specific with that. And doing your own taxes as a full-time freelance writer was hell. So I recommend outsourcing that. It saved me a lot more time. The fear of freelancing is very real. If you're at a regular job, you know, your boss will probably tell you what to do, or you already have an idea. Freelancing is all about persistence and asking and, you know, just really going for it. I think a lot of people who don't have a journalism background think they're not qualified to be a freelance writer. And I know that last year's Plutus Award winner for Best Contributor, Holly Johnson, she doesn't have a journalism background, and she's one of the best writers in this space. You do not need to have one. It helps me, but again, I probably could have read a bunch of books and saved myself a lot of money. Ask for help, for advice. Again, this community is super welcoming. They don't mind sharing. I had so much help when I was starting out in the beginning, and most people are happy to pay it forward. So again, on the last point, very little of my work comes from inbound marketing, which is people emailing me, asking me if I can write for them. That's still a really small percentage, just because I don't rank really high for SEO, for personal finance writer. But that's why it's so important to go out there and email people. I think I have between a 5 to 10% rate of emailing people and actually getting work from it. So you're going to email 100 people, 10 of them might give you something. 90 might not even respond to your email. That's fine, that's normal. I've talked to other writers, that's just an industry standard. Especially people who are in charge of content, they're probably getting lots of emails. And again, don't be afraid to follow up. Yeah, do you have a question? Yeah, at the end I have a list of resources, sorry. Yeah, there's so many great authors who've written books about the craft of writing and journalism. Bobby Knight once said that we learned to write in second grade and most of us move beyond that, so most of us. Another little trick I use, calendar reminders for following up. If anyone uses Inbox by Google, not Gmail, but Inbox, you can snooze in email. And so I've started snoozing them. So if a client tells me, reach out to me in 3 weeks, that's when we'll have our pitch meeting. I'll set that email reminder. Or I also use some labels for following up for people who don't have a specific time frame. And again, that really helps me because following up when they ask you to is really important. I've probably mentioned it a lot, but again, it's just a huge reason why I've been able to make it work. Some of my favorite resources. Freelance Success is a forum, but they send out weekly emails, and they'll usually have 1 or 2 publications or websites that they're featuring that pay well. Yeah, it costs $100 a year. It's at least paid for itself 10 times over. And again, it comes with a forum and people writing questions and ranting about things. And you can ask, hey, this client approached me. Does anyone know anything about them? It's just full of really great resources. It's a really small community, so you'll get to know everyone's names. Plus, it's not on Facebook, so it's not going to distract you into getting on social media. One of the courses I took starting out was 30 Days or Less to Freelance Writing Success from, now she's my business coach, Gina Horkey, and it's really great for beginners. She's a self-taught freelance writer, and even as someone who is already doing it, I learned a lot going through it about pitching. She just has a ton of content out there. Freelance Writer's Den is run by Carol Tice, who is a legendary freelance writing teacher. It's much more geared toward beginners, how to get out of content mills if you've been writing, for $10 a post. It's really helpful. And she has special classes for different topics and niches. ASGA is the American Society of Journalism and Authors. It's definitely for more experienced writers because they have to approve your membership with certain clips before you can get in. But I've definitely had it pay off somewhat with virtual client connections and referrals from other writers. So it's not necessarily for beginners, but it can come in handy later. Client Connection Service was started by Carrie Smith, if anyone's a member of Careful Sense. That's her group. And it's a paid job board. I'm not sure what it is now. It's $40 a month for those who started out. But it's great. She vets the clients, so they're all paying a decent wage, which is really, really important because you might talk to a big company that pays 2 cents a word, which is just really low. So these are some of my favorites. Grammarly is an app that does spelling, grammar check. Again, if you're doing this by yourself, you're not always going to have a proofreader and someone going over your work, so it helps using a software like that. And they have a paid version that goes into more extensive things, like maybe the sentence is too clunky, this is too long. It's really useful. Hemingway app is free. It's just a site where you can cut and paste your article, and it will tell you some of the major issues with it. I really like it because it can help you say, okay, this is passive voice. You don't want to do that. Here's how you can fix it. And again, totally free. Trello is how I keep track of all my tasks. It just really helps to have all the articles in there. But again, I also use a spreadsheet, so it just depends on what you're comfortable with. I know some writers who just use a calendar, like a physical paper, and they just write it on their calendar when things are due. So find out what works for you. Try a few different things. Calendly is one of my favorites. I use the free version. Setting up meetings and talking to clients over the phone is really annoying, especially when you're in a time zone that no one else is located in. Calendly, clients can go on my Calendly, see when I'm available, and choose a time. It emails, both of our contact information. It's really handy. And again, I use the free version. And this is something that just saves you from yelling, well, I'm free from 1 to 3, and then they say, well, I'm only free from 3:30 and on. So it just saves you a lot of unnecessary time. And at debtfreeafter3.com/FinCon, I have all of those. And those have also some of my favorite books, which are On Writing Well is legendary. I'm pretty sure we had that in Journalism 101. Roy Peter Clark is a foremost writing coach. He has several books. 55 Writing Tools is probably one of my favorites. It's written really well, broken down really concisely. He's just a master at it. Stephen King on writing is really great. There's a lot of other resources out there. And once you go on Amazon and you click on one of those books, they'll have lots of recommendations. But they're probably enough to get you started. I think also reading a lot is just important if you're going to be a writer. And not necessarily reading articles or print publications, even reading novels, because you just get exposed to different kinds of writing, and it helps you see what's out there, what's available, maybe just helps you find your voice a little bit. And now we have time for questions. Yeah?
Do you have a separate website between your personal blog and then your freelance writing site? Because I really don't want to have just a hire me tab or something like that on my actual platform, my blog.
Yeah, I have, I wonder if I can pull it up. So I'll let you guys see what this looks like. I do that because I started my blog way before I was a freelance writer. So this is what my writing website looks like. So I have some testimonials. These are some of my former clients. Their testimonial, contact me. This is what, I just have a select portfolio. And I have a link to my blog, another testimonial. I keep them separate because part of it was that I did start them separately, but my blog is much more my own thoughts and opinions, and it is about personal finance, but it's not really related to my career. So when I'm emailing a client, this is what I send them. And I'll tell them, my portfolio's on here, I have testimonials. I do have a link, I have a link to the blog on here, and I have a Hire Me tab on my blog because some people might go there, and they might go there for sponsored posts and affiliates and things like that that are much more blog-centric. So I think you will have to pay extra, obviously, to create a separate website, but I think it's worth it. The cost is pretty minimal. Yeah.
Are there websites that are more tolerant of maybe permission from beginners?
Sorry, what?
Are there websites that are more tolerant of beginner articles?
I think what a lot of people do at the start is that they'll start their own blog and start writing there. And then websites that don't pay, because they don't pay, they're gonna be more accepting of new writers, or ones that don't pay what necessarily the market rate might be. I don't necessarily have a list of them. I'm not sure if you could find that. But again, Huffington Post accepts almost anyone. And it's true. And it sounds cool to clients who don't know that they accept everyone. But yeah, I think writing for free, just in the beginning, I'm not an advocate for writing for exposure. Exposure kills. But in the beginning, just to get enough samples to have to send to potential clients, it's worth it. Yeah.
So I have some writing samples that aren't related to the topic that I would like to do freelance writing in. So I've written for free for a local website where I live, for policy issues, which I think it would help to show my, I guess my ability to take an assignment and turn it into an article and do the research. Do you think that would be helpful material to present at a pitch? If let's say I was going to a potential client for personal finance.
So you're trying to switch from policy to personal finance?
Yeah, so I read about personal finance on my blog, and that's my interest.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to try to get paid writing gigs, that's what I would be looking into. But I don't have much of a portfolio in personal finance except my blog.
What I might try is just to do 2 or 3 free writing samples in personal finance, because I only send 3 clips in an email to a client. I mean, they're not gonna, if they read all 3, I'm impressed. So that's really all you might need just to get started, just to say I have this. If you're really proud of a particular policy piece that you think showcases your reporting or your writing skills, I think that's also fine to include. Yeah.
Did you put together some sort of contract for your client to sign, that you sign, as far as terms, conditions, and how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so I would say most of my clients come to me with their own contracts that they've had their lawyers go through. I also have one that I use that my law school dropout friend wrote me. I think it's good. And because there are some things you should be aware of. In my contract, I include the net 30 that I will charge a late fee, because that's something that's really important to me. There's something called the indemnification clause that is a really big issue right now for journalists. What that means, and they include it in a lot of these contracts, is that if the publication is sued because of your piece, you will cover all of their expenses and whatever the loss is, if they do lose the case. But you also pay for the lawyer fees if that's not included. That's a huge issue because it's also very hard as a freelancer to get insurance. I think some policies I've looked at were about $1,200 a month, so I've not bought one yet. I know some people have. And some of those policies might not cover you if you've signed a contract with one of these clauses. So there's definitely some things to include. I also put in rush fees in my contracts. Actually, let me see if I can. I'll just pull it up. I also include the rate, which is really important. I include the word count because if they come back and say, I actually wanted 800 words, you say, well, this is how much we signed for. And I think a lot of that in writing helps, but if you had a phone conversation, having a contract can solidify that. I have written without a contract before, and it's just a dumbass move to make. So this is my contract. You know, it's written like a lawyer wrote it. And I mean, some of it is, again, like a contract, just some of it is just totally unnecessary. I also include a kill fee in my contract, which is something that a lot of magazines do, a lot of newsstand magazines. A kill fee is basically if you've written something that the client, you know, asked for, and they decide, we don't want it, our direction has changed, you're stuck because they're not gonna pay you. A kill fee is them saying, we don't need it, but here is 50% for doing it, because they're assuming you can go out and pitch that article again. I've had a few clients who have killed articles. Most of them I have been able to place elsewhere, some of them not at the same rate, at a lower rate. So in my own contract, I charge 50% kill fee if the project has already been commissioned, and 100% kill fee if I've already written it and delivered it to them on time. Because, I mean, if you hire a plumber, they do the work, you decide, I didn't need my toilet fixed, you still have to pay them. And I don't think writers should be treated any differently.
Do you give them full rights to all your material?
I think I have First North American serial rights, which they have obviously the first rung of it, and then the rights revert back to me after a specific point in time. And you can negotiate your contracts. You can ask to remove the indemnification clause. I don't have any friends who have been sued, so I don't want to scare anyone, but if you write about more controversial things, you know, I think that's, which a lot of journalists do, a lot of freelance journalists do, that's a bigger issue. I haven't worried about it so much. I'm not saying, not a lawyer, there's probably some out there that would disagree with me that think it's worth getting the insurance. So yeah, I think, and I know a lot of people do resell articles that they have the rights for, but you always want to make sure that you have the proper language in your contract for that, because then you could get sued if you're reprinting something that someone else owns the rights for. Like Forbes, for example, after a week, an article you've written for Forbes, you can put on your blog, full text. The rights revert back to you after a week. So it just depends website by website. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
So if they do have their own contract, you try to get them to use yours or modify theirs to accommodate the clauses they wrote, or
Usually they won't sign both because usually they have a legal department that's gone through theirs. So I'll just go through theirs. Again, contracts are really boring to read. So go through theirs, ask questions, and again, you can get things removed. I know some people who have gotten better reprinting rights by asking, or some people have gotten the indemnification clause removed just by asking. So those are also negotiable. So usually if they already have one, you'll have to use theirs. For some of my smaller clients that are just, you know, I'm writing just for, they're a one-person entity, I'll suggest mine because they likely don't have one they use for freelancers. So ASGA is one. You have to, when you apply, you have to send in clips, and I think they have to be of a certain length, and they've just got a few rules. And the membership is it's skewed a little more toward the journalist side, rather like traditional journalism, which is dying, in case anyone didn't know. So I'm still iffy on it, honestly, like as a member. For any of the women out there, if there's a group, the binders, and it's just full of female and gender nonconforming writers, and that's really great. There are lots of different sub-binders. There's one for freelance writers. There's people who write scripts, and that's just a Facebook group. So, and they're pretty cool. I'm in part of one that's located in Denver, that's local, and they have one for writing jobs, which has been great. And it's just, again, just a great community to be a part of. So it's a little different. It's not like other industries that have great professional organizations, but Freelance Success is probably my favorite, and it's, again, it's $100 a year, and the market guides have had great clients, and it's just, even if you just use it as a forum, it's a great resources and be able to connect with people. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah. Don't be shy.
Do you, for most of your sites, does it say like written by Zina, or is it almost like ghostwriting where it looks like the site has written the article, or is your name on it at all, I guess is what I'm asking.
I would say it might be about a 50-50 split. I don't have a problem with ghostwriting because I do have a lot of clips at this point, again, just coming from a journalism background. But I have friends who, they're the opposite. They come from a corporate background, and everything they've ever written was ghostwritten, and they can't use that, and they can't show that. Maybe they've even signed a contract to that effect. So that part really just depends on, you know, the client and what you want to do. And it's something to look out for. If you don't have any samples or you don't have enough, it might not be worth looking after clients who aren't going to put your byline on there. And I have some pieces that, like I've written for Discover Bank, and they don't put my byline on there. How do I prove I wrote it? I really can't. I mean, unless I went through the agency and got them to sign something. And people are taking my word for it, but it is, you know, it's unfortunate. So again, I don't mind as much. Some people might care, and it's always a good thing to ask before you start writing for the publication what their expectations are going to be. If they don't have any byline on there, then, you know, it might still be okay for you to use in your portfolio and to send out to clients. If they have the CEO's byline on there, then they might not want anyone to know that it's not that actual person writing it. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah.
Most of your clients send you 1099s, and if they don't, do you just keep track of it yourself and send it in?
I do keep track of it, partly because if you've worked for a regular company, they send you a W-2, you probably get it into January, beginning of February. I got some 1099s at the end of March, which was so fun to file my taxes the week they were due while I was on vacation. So I keep track of it for the purposes of being able to tell my accountant, this is how much I was paid, so he can start working on my taxes before I've gotten all my 1099s in. Wow, what's great, I think this is legal. Again, no one sue me. If you're paid via PayPal, I believe you only have to report that. Like, they're not going to send you a 1099 if they paid you via PayPal. If you earned more than, I think it's $25,000. Carrie, do you know this? Okay. This is all very complicated. I'm just like Hemingway. I sit with a bottle of scotch and just see what happens. Um, I'm just gonna let the cat out of the bag. I work with my husband Sam. He's right there. Um, Journalism majors. And what I do is when I get an assignment, I send it to him on Trello, and he does my outline and research, and he finds the relevant links. He sends it back to me. I'll write about 3/4, 80% of the article, do any interviews that I need to do, try to edit it myself, send it back to him. He'll finish it up, edit it, tell me it's good enough to show other people in the world. Outlines are huge. I just can't imagine writing without one because there's so much information in your head and that you've seen, and I think organizing your thoughts before you start writing makes it easier and makes it more cohesive, and just it helps you formulate what you're going to say. So I always do subheads. I'm a huge, huge fan of subheads. Apologies to all my editors who may be sick of seeing them. And it's good for the reader too because it breaks up the article. If they scan it before they read it, they can get an idea of what it's going to be about. So I just hugely recommend outlining, and I like having my Google Doc open, and I like having the tabs of, similar the research that I have and the quotes that I've done. I have that in the same document, and I have my outline, and then I just kind of write it piece by piece. And I think it also helps taking at least a few hours, if not a full day, to edit the article, because it's when you write something and then try to edit it yourself, you're too close to it. I'm much better at editing something else wrote, like just much better. These apps like Grammarly, Hemingway app are really great because they can do some of the basic spell check and typo stuff for you, but they can't necessarily go back and say, well, you meant to talk about why Roth IRAs are bad, but you didn't put the word Roth in there. And having the day apart gives you a little bit of distance that you need to edit it yourself. I know some people also have, their spouses look at it, friends. My mom sends me corrections all the time. So having another fresh pair of eyes, especially if it's something you're really proud of, it always helps. Does anyone else have any questions? I'm not sure how we're doing on time. About 5 minutes left. Okay, I'm my website, zinakumok.com. You can email me, zinakumok@gmail.com, if you have any questions, or and then debtfreeafter3.com/FinCon. We'll have all those resources. There are some affiliate links on there. I'm sorry. So go to Amazon and buy a laptop, and just let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. This community it's the reason I'm able to do this and work at home. So I'm super grateful and want to pay it forward. So thank you.